This podcast is brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine for those that love to make and drink great beer. To learn more or to subscribe, visit beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew. We're in Montreal, Quebec for this episode of the Craft Beer and Brewing Podcast. I'm Jamie Bogner. My guest today is a lager brewer here in Montreal, Jean-Phillippe Lalonde. Welcome to the podcast, Jean-Phillippe.
Hi, thank you for having us.
You here at Silo? It's Silo. Silo.
Yeah, you can say Silo Brewing. In French, we say Brasserie Silo.
For sure. The brewery here was recommended to me, and I'm trying to place it, but I believe it was one of my Canadian friends from our Czech mission trip a few years ago, and recommended that I had to check out Silo when I was here in Montreal. You've been brewing lager beer for quite a long time at a brewery that you launched before this, and now here at Silo, and built a reputation for everything from Kölsch to Pilsner to Svetli Ležák to altbier and others. You might have been a little bit ahead of the curve on some of those here in Montreal years and years ago. You'll tell that history and story, but we're going to talk about lager and Kölsch, maybe Kölsch and lager in that order, and because we don't talk about Kölsch very much here on the podcast. Anyway, felt like we needed to talk about lager brewing here in a Montreal context, and so we are going to do that today. Before we do, for years, G&D Chillers has chilled the beers you love, partnering with 3,000 plus breweries across the country. They're proud of the cool partnerships they've built, offering 24/7 service and support. They build with non-proprietary parts, expert craftsmanship, and constant innovation. Their in-house engineering crew have been piping breweries, wineries, and distilleries for more than 30 years. They offer free piping design and consultation with the sale of every chiller they build. Reach out for a quote today at gdchillers.com or call to discuss your next project. And brewers, what if your yeast could do more than just ferment? With Berkeley Yeast, it can. They bioengineer ordinary strains and make them extraordinary, enhancing the flavors you want and eliminating the ones you don't. Now, in addition to competitive pricing, they're offering free overnight shipping on 5+ barrel pitches. Try it out. If you don't love it, they'll happily refund you. So why settle for ordinary when you can brew with better yeast? Visit berkeleyyeast.com to learn more and start brewing with science on your side. Also, every beer menu could use a refresh button on the fruit flavors. That's why it's time to revisit Old Orchard's flavored craft juice concentrate blends, where the latest additions include fruit punch, guava, kiwi, and pomegranate. They aren't stopping there and welcome flavor suggestions from the brewing industry. For more information and free samples, they are waiting at oldorchard.com/brewer. That's oldorchard.com/brewer. Jean-Phillippe, tell me your story. Tell me the story goes back before Silo. You have
sure.
You have been doing this for a while, and with a pretty consistent focus on on lager and European beer styles. How did you catch the craft beer bug, and how did you become a brewer, and how has that progressed through your career as a business owner and operator?
Yeah, like most of the other brewers, I began by home brewing. I was brewing 4-liter batches in my mom's basement when I was 17. So it's been a while. It's been more than 25 years now. And fast forward, after my college studies, I started to work at in breweries in 2005. So I had the time to try a lot of styles and to make my mind of what I like and what I don't like that much. In 2008, we my girlfriend and I were traveling in Europe for a few months. So there I discovered what I liked the most was German ale and German lagers. So we had the chance to visit Germany a few times while living in Belgium. So I would say that the beer I prefer while living in Belgium were my trip to Germany. So I discovered Kölsch and altbier, and we visited Munich and Bamberg. So when I came back,
Köln and Düsseldorf are pretty easy train ride from Brussels,
Yeah, so it made sense to visit places like that every time we had the chance. So when we came back, I had the plan to open a brew pub in Montreal, and so I wanted to brew simple beers like that. So my dream was to have a one beer brewery, which is kind of stupid. It's kind of impossible. But if you go
I think that is still a lot of brewers' dream.
Yeah. But if you go to Köln, to Köln, you have a very big menu, but there's only beer, only one beer at the top, and the rest is just like food. So that was the idea. But when we opened the first the brew pub, which was named La Succursale, we had a Kölsch and an altbier, and a bitter and a porter.
And this was 2011.
So it was 2011, yeah. So at that time, people were craving for a barrel-aged and crazy hoppy IPA and 1,000 IBUs and things like that. So it didn't catch up at first. But
Sure.
But we were there for a few years, and people were a little inspired by that, by simple beers that were consistent and that were drinkable.
Right.
So a few years ago, I decided that I wanted to have a brewery where we can sell beer in cans. We can distribute more beer. So that's when I decided to open Silo, which was in March 2020. So we opened for two weekends, and then we had to close because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
But retrospectively, it was a blessing because we didn't have to care about the restaurant part, and we could focus on canning beer and distributing, which was a new thing for me. I had to learn that, so it was a good timing when you think about it.
Focus on the beer itself, on the new system, and in that kind of packaging process, and just focus on that without the distraction of it would have been nice to have the revenue from the tap room and
Yeah, but at that time, people were buying a lot more beers at the grocery stores.
Now, like in 2020, coming into it and launching this brewery here, the craft beer world's approach to the kinds of styles that you still wanted to continue making is a little bit different. The context had shifted, and now some of those bigger beers and whatnot still have some place in craft beer. They may not be driving as much of the conversation. Obviously, hazy IPA is driving much more of the conversation than it was in 2011. But now, there's a number of lager-only breweries, a number of, European-focused craft breweries across North America, and you come into it in this kind of context. I want to talk about how you then, carved out space for this and continue to tell this story and the beers that you select, and then also want to talk about how, where you pulled that inspiration from, because, even as I taste this Kölsch here, you can see that it may not necessarily feel like a stereotypical American iteration of Kölsch, but it is actually closer to some of that German origin of Kölsch, in the same way that I think that a lot of brewers in North America have a kind of reductive idea of what lager and German ales are in this minimalist sense, and I taste much more of a broad approach to flavor, which feels like actual German beers there. So let's talk about that and how where those points that you pull from. Before we do that, both classic and contemporary Indie Hops Lorien was developed with crisp, low-gravity beer in mind, a nod to the past with an eye on the future. Lorien seamlessly combines traditional elements of European noble hops with an elegant twang of American modernity. Low alpha and squeaky clean, Lorien provides a refined, smooth bitterness to any lager and delivers enticing flavors and aromas of lemon lime zest, fresh melon, wildflowers, sweet hay, and cinnamon spice. Refreshing the past for a present time, Lorien's classic profile and distinct finish are conducive to celebration and appetite and evoke feelings of a grassy meadow near a cold mountain stream. Summer is near and Lorien awaits. Learn more about Lorien and the rest of Indie's varieties at www.indiehops.com. Indie Hops, life is short. Let's make it flavorful. And are you a craft brewery looking to elevate your branding? Steel chill cups are the perfect promotional tool. Crafted from 100% recyclable steel and proudly made in the USA, these 16-ounce cups come in vibrant red, blue, green, and gray. Designed to keep beverages cold and frosty to the touch, they enhance the drinking experience at festivals, tastings, and tap rooms. Customizable branding options allow breweries to showcase logos and unique designs, boosting brand recognition. These stylish cups not only serve a practical purpose, but also become keepsakes for beer lovers. Discover how steel chill cups can put your brand on every pour. Visit steelchillcups.com today. So let's talk about what your, I would call it a touchstone might be. What where you found inspiration. I think Germany's a big place. The range of brewing. The more time that I spend in Europe, the more you realize that there's not one idea of what these things are. There's a wide diversity, even amongst what Kölsch or altbier is. Certainly about what Helles and Pilsner are, and we tend to get a shortened version of that as it's translated in by American brewers. Where did you look to for inspiration, and what inspired you from some of those beers that you tasted?
It's very hard to have the right idea of what European beer tastes without going there. It doesn't export well, and sometimes your recollection of what it tasted could shift with time. And I did not have that much time to that much chances to go to Europe and taste. So I've been a few times, but what I got from those experiences is that the beer from these places are more a mean to bring people together, and it was not that much about. I mean, they're passionate about their beer, but they don't want to change it all the time. Like, it's a good beer, it serves a purpose, and you can just stick with that. So it's kind of my philosophy. And if I have something that we're brewing a beer that I like, that people like we're not going to touch it. We may be tweaking a few things, but we're going to brew it again and again and again, and we're not going to try to do new beers every 2 weeks. And that's what I like about lagers. It's not that much the lagers itself. It's the culture around that you can take time, go slow, and once you got something that you like, you can keep it for forever, almost.
Sure. As I taste this Kölsch here, there's maybe I would call it a little more fullness to it than I might, and I think that that kind of body is actually much more common in German lager and ale, and Americans tend to have a very it has to be crisp. It has to be crisp. And we think about that crisp term. So tell me about the inspiration for this Kölsch.
So there's a few things in your question. The fullness. It could come from sugar, but it certainly will come from proteins. And you can have a low gravity, low finishing gravity, and still be full. And for German style, we don't look for dry beer anyway. It's not something that they will try to do that much. So you need some body, you need some fullness, but it may comes from the balance with the hops, from the bitterness. So you need to have enough bitterness to balance the malt, but everything is about balance. It really depends on what style of beer you're brewing. If you have a sweeter Kölsch, but it's balanced with hops, it will become drinkable anyway. And also I know that a lot of people came back from a Germany trip and say to me that this is an authentic Kölsch. But to be fair, this is Canadian malt, and this is a mix of crystal American hops with German hops. So the only authentic thing about this Kölsch would be the yeast, which is, I think, the most important thing to taste the Kölsch that will remember you of what you taste in Germany.
Yeah. I try not to bother with definitions like authentic, because I think they get to be dangerous traps for us to fall into. You know, I think that the idea of authenticity is such a broad thing that, and there are so many different models that you could use. You know, if you're thinking about what is authentic, I mean, what region do you pull from and say, well, this is authentic, but this isn't. You know, Kölsch is a hybrid beer. It's a hybrid ale lager, and you are making it in a hybrid way here with you know, European inspiration and North American ingredients, and you know, and that's okay. But I think that what I enjoy about this is, and you know, as you talk about that kind of fullness, obviously, you know, there are methods. You have a direct fire brew house here, and you know, that has some potential to add some character to that. Maybe you know, maybe we'll talk about that process. You, with all of your lagers and ales, have a single infusion system, and you have found ways to use that single infusion system with this direct fire kettle to build some of the character. Tell me about how you you know, think about that as a process and some of the way you use your brew house, which is, you know, it's not built for decoction. It's not built for, you know, some of the more, you know, for extensive step mashing. You know, it's very much, but you have found a method to build this kind of fullness and body, and you know, in the lagers and ales you make.
Yeah. So I will. We don't do any decoction. So at first we wanted to build a brewery that was not too costly, and
sure.
All the suppliers will tell you that you need steam to do decoction, which is way more expensive than the direct fire with gas. And when we came back from Czech Republic in 2019, I remembered that Pilsner Urquell were still doing the direct fire kettle. So they boil for 2 hours with that, and it struck me that this beer is so sweet and so bitter, and on paper that doesn't work at all. But when you taste it, it's very drinkable. Maybe there's something about the service with a lot of foam and all those factor, a lot of small details that do that this beer works. And I decided that direct kettle fire would be a part of the process and an ingredient of the lager. So we don't do decoction, but for Czech-style beer, we're gonna take the first wort, which is at 19 or 20 degree Plato, and we're gonna boil it for an amount of time, and then return it to the mash, so we can get that marred flavor and that caramelized flavor by doing this, because I think that you can be inspired by the traditional brewing method, but
right.
If you don't want to do to have all the hassle of doing
sure
the complicated things, maybe you can just take one thing that you need,
right.
Flavor wise, and use it to your advantage.
Sure. So a little bit of pseudo decoction.
Yeah, like fake decoction. We don't call it decoction here, but
right.
It kind of has the some of the purpose.
Tell me, you know, technically, you know, what that is. You take those, you know, that first runnings off the wort up to a certain gravity, and fill the kettle, and then just boil for how long?
It will depend on the beers, but
okay.
Maybe 20-30 minutes, more than enough. And you can smell it in the brew house, like it smells like cookies, and
right.
It's the smells change immediately when you boil the concentrated wort, and then we take it back to the mash. It's still a single infusion because we're gonna mash the pilsners, the Czech-style pale lager, to a very high degrees, like 69 or 69 or 70 degrees. So
okay.
we want to keep final gravity pretty high to match with the styles.
Right. So it's okay that it's a hot mash there, so that it ferments maybe not quite as deeply.
No, but we're gonna have almost the same spec as Pilsner Urquell, which is the 12 Plato, and finish at 3.5, around that.
Yeah. How much color contribution do you get from doing that you know, concentrated boil?
It's hard to tell because it's we only do it on pale beers. We we put much effort in the pale lager than in the dark in the brew house. But also the Czech style will have some caramel malts and a little bit of Vienna, a little bit of melanoided malt too, which are giving us some color. I know that at Pilsner Urquell they use specialty malt too to achieve this just this color, which is
they might not
dark.
always say that they do, but they do.
Pretty
yes.
sure they do. It's too dark to be just with boiling.
Sure. Well, let's go back to Kölsch. I like I said, we don't talk about Kölsch very much, but I'm intrigued to talk about this as the probably one of the most popular beers that you make here.
Yeah.
As you think about, how did you start with a recipe? You mentioned that you're using North American ingredients. You're using grain here. Talk to me about the recipe, and maybe we even start with water, because water here is going to be a pretty important thing.
Yeah, but in Montreal we have pretty good water. It's 30 ppm of calcium, and everything is pretty low. We're taking our water in the St. Lawrence River, so it's pretty stable too. There's no variation in the year. So we just add a little bit of calcium chloride and food grade acid.
Right.
Yeah. And for the recipe, it's pretty straightforward. I don't like to add too much things, so it's like 10% wheat. The rest is pale malt.
Sure. What do you find, and what kind of wheat do you use then in this? What do we find that it gives? Obviously, that's going to add some of the kind of body and fullness that I'm tasting in it.
You know what? I'm not sure. Is there a big difference or not? It may be subtle. I think.
I mean, we add wheat to IPAs for a reason, right?
Yeah, but it's a small percentage, and wheat it tastes a lot like barley. If you taste a Grodziskie, it's obviously smoked, but it's 100% wheat, but it will taste like beer. So it's not that different. And the reason is that in 2010 I brewed that beer that way, and it was good. So we didn't touch it. At first I'd use toasted wheat, and now it's malted wheat.
Yeah,
but it's pretty much the same.
Sure. Are there specific ingredient sources that you really love for these beers? For the maltsters that you enjoy, that you find? We work with BSG, so we take the Canadian 2-row normal malt. For the lagers, we're gonna use more of the Weyermann ingredients. Sure. So then, you build a malt-based 10% wheat. How does your recipe design for Kölsch go from there?
It's pretty straightforward. Like when people ask for a recipe, I give it to them because I don't really care about recipe. It's not. It's not what's important. So we're gonna add 25 IBUs of hops at 60 minutes, and that's it. And the key is the fermentation.
And that's crystal.
It's a mix of tradition and crystal.
Okay.
Yeah, crystal. I really like crystal hops. It's kind of one of the hops that I use from the longest. It tastes a little bit like Cascade, but a little bit more subtle. Mm-hmm. But it's too much grapefruit, so I cannot use it 100%. But still, it's only at 60 minutes, and you can definitely taste the hops in the beer, even if there's no late addition.
Yeah. So that's it. Just an initial 60-minute hop addition, and that's that.
Yeah. The simplest way you can brew.
Easy.
Easy. I think that the brewery should be for. What I like is when nothing happens in a day, like the boring days. that makes the great beer, and so you don't need to change too much things. We don't do complicated things unless it's very necessary. We single infuse at 66, and then we boil for an hour, and that's it. Like the deceivingly simple recipe.
It's refined.
Yeah,
refined and
It is. We've been brewing that beer for 14 years, and it's still very popular.
Sure, sure. What through that process, are there some small things in your process? As I've talked to other brewers like Ashley and Bill at Bierstadt, they'll say, the difference in great lager brewing isn't doing one particular thing. It's doing 100 different things over and over again and improving every little one of them. It's the 100 things. And so are there some of those kind of process points that over the last 14 years of making the beer, you find that you pay very close attention to because they make a big difference?
Yeah, it's hard to tell because I've been brewing for a long time. So for me, it's kind of a given. It's simple. I don't think about small details, but it definitely is about small details, and that's what I like. It's like the brew house is set one way, and every day is the same, and so we don't have to think about small details. They're just there. But usually, when I taste a beer that I don't like, sometimes it's just the place is not clean enough, and the obvious things like. It usually comes from fermentation. What's in the brew house is important, obviously. But if you have a simple process and you just keep it that way all day, every day, you don't have to take. Like, there's not one thing that I'm doing that a secret ingredient that makes the beer more maltier or hoppier or whatever.
That's absolutely true, and you do have a very clean brew house back there. I don't know if there is a causal relationship between a dirty brew house and beer that is not as finely expressed, but I do think that there is definitely a correlation there. That if you're not paying attention to
when you visit a brewery, usually you can see that the kettle is filthy. And when you use direct fire, if the bottom of the kettle is there's things on it, it will burn and it will give you flavor that you don't want, and you cannot repeat every time because it's not the same dirt every time. So it's kind of a simple thing, but just clean what you have so it's repeatable easily.
Well, let's talk about fermentation on the Kölsch. That's, this is one where you're using a traditional Kölsch yeast for it. Talk to me about that process of fermentation.
Yeah, again, it's pretty straightforward. Like all the beers that we brew, we're going to try to pitch 1 or 2 degrees Celsius under the fermentation temperature. In that case, it's 17 Celsius. And we're going to keep it that way until the beer is finished. And then we're going to wait a few days, take a diacetyl test. We're going to eat a sample and taste it for a diacetyl precursor. And if it's finished, we're going to cool it, crop the yeast, and put it in a bottling tank.
What yeast do you use for this beer?
It's the WLP 029 from White Labs.
Yeah. And so just a, relatively standard process there.
Yeah. There's nothing to be complicated.
Sure. As you taste this beer, as a finished beer, how do you describe it? Is there do you have a kind of mental language that you think that it should taste like when you judge a batch against the idea of what you think this beer is? How do you do you have words that explain that?
I like it to be, like I said, drinkable. It's a little malty, but the hoppiness is balancing it, and there's a slight honey taste or aroma that blends with like yellow fruits and a little bit of grapefruit. Everything is pretty subtle, but if you taste a pint, you won't get bored before the end. I
can see some of the honey note, maybe even a bit of wildflower, and or maybe a little bit of purple wildflower or something, in that kind of zone. It's an interesting beer, and I love the way that it has this kind of expressive fullness while still being a very light beer there. Well, let's change gears now and talk a bit about lager, Svetli Ležák, German style Pilsner, and some of the other lagers in particular. And I imagine we're going to get to the same place. We just do it simply the way that we've done it for 14 years. But I'm still going to try to get in and talk about that process. Before we do, breweries don't just need a point of sale system. They need a one-stop shop operating system. That's where Arrived comes in. Not only does Arrived offer a world-class POS built specifically for breweries, but they also provide Arrived brewery management, e-commerce, and more to help breweries scale and thrive. From taproom to distribution, Arrived gives breweries the tools to streamline operations and boost profits, all in one powerful platform. Visit Arrived, ARRYVED.com to learn more. Also, this episode is sponsored by PackTech, delivering craft beer multi-packing you can trust. PackTech's handles are made from 100% recycled plastic and are fully recyclable, helping breweries close the loop and advance the circular economy. With a minimalist design, durable functionality you can rely on, and custom color matching, PackTech helps brands stand out while staying sustainable. Trusted by craft brewers nationwide, they offer a smarter, sustainable way to carry your beer. To learn more, visit packtech-opi.com. That's PAKTECH-OPI.com. Also, if you're launching a brewery or acquiring an existing one, consider our brewery workshop and new brewery accelerator. September 14th through 17th in Fort Collins, Colorado. Over 4 days, we engage in panel discussions, technical brewery tours, networking, and small working group sessions that help you better understand and prepare for the challenges of brewery operation. Tickets are on sale now. Visit breweryworkshop.com for more information and to secure your spot. All right, Jean-Phillippe, let's talk about lager beer. We just poured a little bit of Svetli Ležák. You make an 8 degree and a 10 degree and 12 degree. Yeah. 8 and 10.
Yeah, I have this is the 12, which would be something like Pilsner Quell, if you could say. It's a lot lighter, but in color. But we also have a 10 Plato, which is a little bit uppier for us, and an 8 Plato, which would go at 2.7% alcohol. So that's one thing I like, that we can brew low ABV beers that are tasty, and so you can drink more. And we try to keep our lines of beer be under 5%. Yeah, most of our beer are pretty low alcohol.
Within this 12 degree, how did you start thinking about? Obviously Pilsner Quell for you is the big inspiration in this. This might have a little less diacetyl than Pilsner Quell's typical expression. Sorry, just had to take that shot. But but how did you when you tasted that, and how did you start thinking about the flavors that you would want to pull and the way that you wanted your own Czech-style pale lager to express?
Yeah. So again, I get inspired by the traditional method, but I kind of do a cherry picking of what I like and what I don't care about. So what I don't care about is diacetyl. So I don't want it. I don't want it in my beers. I don't really like it. I can feel it's something that enhance the flavor at some point, but it's very hard to control. And we want more consistency in our lagers. So for the other beers, we're gonna test it before we crash it. But what I like about the Czech styles beer is the balance between sweet and bitter. And it's kind of a revelation that you can go so sweet and so bitter with a lager.
It's the same in hazy IPA, right? That they can be sweet.
I don't agree.
I almost got you there.
Yeah.
Almost got you. So, yes, I think in a general sense, you can find balance at varying levels. If I think about, an audio metaphor, a music metaphor, you can find balance loud. You can find balance soft. It all becomes how you mix, the audio for those different kinds of conditions. And so a bad mix is a bad mix, whether it's a loud metal band or whether it's a soft acoustic performer.
But
and so
we talked about how things changed few minutes ago, but I think it didn't change that much, because when I were drinking beer in 2005, 2010, people were craving for very bitter beers, and then they wanted to have a very big barrel-aged flavor, and then they wanted, and now it's the sweet the sweet beers, the slushies, and the New England IPAs, and the imperial stout with whatever in it. And I don't think there's a balance, and there's a drinkability in those beers. They are exception, but it's mostly the one flavor will dominate everything. And I don't like sweet beers, and I don't like very bitter beers. So when we're talking about classic styles, they are always in balance, and I think that's why people drink them for the past 200 years.
Sure. So then with this 12-degree Czech Světlý Ležák, what is your goal finishing gravity for that? You say sweet, but it's not really very sweet.
No, it's not that sweet.
It's very only relatively sweet.
Yeah, it's not that sweet. Maybe I could give it another shot at doing it sweeter and more bitter, but I'm kind of happy with the results. So we're gonna keep doing it like we've been doing it for 5 years. So the final gravity is 3.5 Plato.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that is actually a relatively higher finishing gravity, but there is, like you say, this kind of grassy and herbal bitterness to it that feels very Czech and also very refined. Talk to me about how you think about hops in this beer, and how you structure that kind of bitterness so that it's very complementary and easy to drink, even though it is rather, it is very present. So like you can, and what was the IBU goal for this?
Yeah, we're looking for 40 IBUs.
40.
Yeah, but I think that low alpha hops gives a more smooth bitterness, and that's something I learned with time. And you can use a lot of low alpha hops and have a lingering, like this bitterness is staying there. So you want another sip of beer, and that's the point. But it's not too harsh, and we use a lot of late up addition, which may not be something very traditional. But with our system, the direct fire kettle, it stays very hot at the whirlpool, so it's still picking up bitterness at the end. So we have to be careful with the calculation. But yeah, I think that Saz up is very unique, very difficult to substitute. So we may not do decoction and some fermentation things that are traditional to Czech brewing, but we're going to use Saz ups 100% and floor malted Bohemian Pilsner.
Sure. And you're right that was using to get that IBU load with Saz hops means you're using quite a bit of Saz hops, and that builds that kind of bouquet. And there's also, maybe I'm overthinking my wildflower connection, but I see some continuity. Some there too. How do you think about when you are using Saz, how that expresses in the flavor and aroma? Do you have a descriptor for that?
Yeah, I'm not the best with descriptor, but in my mind it's very clear what it tastes. I can recognize it, but it's flowery. But you're gonna ask me for a Hallertauer Mittelfrüh, and I'm gonna say flowery too. But it's not the same at all.
It's different, right? Right. So then let's talk about that process. Is this 100%? Well, actually, it's not going to be 100%. You are using some other malts in this to help build a little bit of body and color. When you think about the grain recipe for a 12-degree Czech, Světlý Ležák, how do you build that recipe?
So we use a little bit of cara foam to give some residual sugar. Something like 5%. Same thing for Vienna malt, which is it's a very small amount. So what's the importance of that? It's hard to tell. It's subtle, and we're gonna use 2% of the melanoidin malt too. Yeah.
Just to add a little bit of color in there.
Yeah,
a
lot
bit
of color and maybe melanoidin.
Just a little bit of that flavor. Sure.
Yeah, but we don't rely on that heavily.
Right.
And so the color still is pretty pale. If you compare it with our Helles, it's going to be darker, but it's still paler than Pilsner Urquell.
Yeah. And this goes through that kind of pseudo decoction, process also.
Yeah. So in that one, it's harder to tell. But if you taste the 2.8% alcohol beer, you will definitely taste the caramel, the fake decoction that we do. It really enhance the caramel flavor and the malty flavor. Yeah.
Yeah, the lighter the beer, the more that's going to be pronounced.
Yeah, it is there, but it's very hard to tell where.
Sure. And this is also still single infusion definitely on the hotter side of that mash, in order to leave some of that that body left in the beer.
Yeah, we don't want it to dry too much because we would have to take out some malt, so we need that amount of malt in the beer. So we mash it pretty high, like 69 degrees, and then we will take the first runnings, the first wort, and boil it for half an hour and return it. Be careful not to be too hot in the mash tun, and that's it.
So you boil it and then maybe let it cool for a little bit before you put it back in the mash tun?
It depends on the quantity that we.
Sure. Sure.
It's that part is it's more not a feeling, but we're still working on the details exactly. Yeah.
Well, let's then follow through and talk about your the boil. And you mentioned that you are pushing late edition hops in this one. Talk to me about that. And then when you say late edition, you mean all the way into the whirlpool?
No, we're gonna do it at 10 and 0 minutes.
Is there an initial charge of?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. We're boiling for 2 hours. So
okay.
Yeah, like they will do in some Czech brewery. So again, we want to use the direct fire to bring us some flavor.
Right.
So we're boiling for 2 hours, and then at 75 minutes we're gonna put some hops, and at 20, 10, and 0 minutes.
And is that also a 2 hour boil for all of these, the 8, the 10, and the 12?
We're gonna do 90 minutes for the other ones.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's pretty
the effect
same.
might be more intense on the
and we
beers.
don't have to we have to be careful not going too bitter on those beers.
Sure. And so how do you balance the hop addition over those additions? How do you split it up? How much goes in early, and then how much at each of the other additions?
Yeah, I understand the question, but I don't have the answer.
Oh, okay.
It's because it depends on the IBUs of the SAS that year, but the late addition will be always the same quantity. Couldn't tell. It's something like 2 kilos for 10 barrel at the end.
Yeah.
And we do 3 additions.
Why does it change based on that year's SAS?
Oh, because the alpha acid will be dramatically different from a year, or sometimes it's as low as 2%, and sometimes you can have SAS at 5%. So you have to be careful about that.
And so if you add too much earlier or too much later, it does what?
So we will use always the same timing, but everything that is in the kettle for more than 15 minutes, we're gonna adjust for alphas.
Oh, just so it doesn't get too bitter for you.
No, I think everybody's doing this in the brewery.
Sure. And then, but there's then nothing in the whirlpool, and there's no dry hopper to this.
Why? I mean, I'm like I said, I'm not super hardcore.
Doing all sorts of things these days.
I'm not super hardcore about traditional techniques, but there's a limit on what you. We've tried it once for a collabs a few years ago to do in another brewery to do a dry up with a lot of SAS, but I did not like the result at all.
Yeah,
and it's certainly not a traditional flavor. I mean, I think that Pilsner Urquell only put hops at the beginning of the boil. So ours is a lot more flowery, and I can live with that, but dry hopping would be a sin.
Do not go a sin.
Yeah.
A sin.
No, but you can do it, but don't
Sure.
call it Svetli Ležák, maybe. Or maybe if you're Czech, you can do whatever you want. But if you're here in North America and want to replicate and sell that to people, maybe you can stick to what it's supposed to be a little bit.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
Talk to me about fermentation on the Czech pale lagers.
Yeah. So for simplicity, we're going to do all of our lagers are starting the same. So we're going to cool to what we can achieve in that day around 8 degrees Celsius, and then we're going to ferment at 10. And if there are problems in the fermentation, we may rise it a little bit, but usually we're going to keep it at 10 degrees. And once the gravity drops and there's still maybe 1 Plato left, we're going to put a Spunnig valve and set it to 0.3 bars, which is about 5 psi, which is not too much because we don't want to stress the yeast. We're going to crop a few times the yeast. And then we're just waiting for the bubbles to stop.
You're going to crop a few times.
Sorry. We're going to crop the yeast at the end.
Okay.
But we're going to use it for a few generations.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and then when the beer is almost finished, we're gonna start dropping it from 1 degree Celsius and see what happens. Sometime at this point,
So more of a soft crash.
yeah, and sometime at this point, the gravity could drop by like 0.1 Plato for 3 or 4 days, every 4 days. So you cannot really tell it. So the Spunnig valve can help us to see that there's a small activities. And then we're going to just wait.
And this is Cylinder Chronicles.
Yeah, we ferment in, one day I would like to have an open fermenter, but for now, for simplicity, we use Cylindro Chronicles only.
And the yeast that you use for these?
For the Czech-style beer, we're going to use the 800 from White Labs.
And it works just fine for you. You found a way to make it, work in this kind of fermentation.
I try to use the Czech ingredient for that beer. So this is a Czech yeast, and it's supposed to come from Pilsner Urquell. So I kind of try to work with that and to learn from it.
Sure.
It's been 5 years, and it's a little challenge for me that yeast, because it gives us a little bit of H2S, rotten eggs, and it's still in the beer at the end. So we have to balance it so there's not too much, but it may be a little bit part of the character of this yeast.
How do you deal with that? How do you correct for it if it's too strong?
Yeah, if it's too strong, we could we can scrub a little bit in the tanks after fermentation. But yeah, that is a challenge with the spooning. You want to spoon, but and keep CO2 in, but you need to get rid of that flavor. So depending on the fermentation, maybe we will have to wait. But scrubbing works fine, but it's kind of a emergency technique.
And then so you spun and put some PSI, but then you're still going to add some CO2 after the fact as well.
Yeah, for sure. Because if we only keep it to 5 psi, even if we cool it to 5 degrees and there's still activity, we're going to be under 2 volume of CO2. So we're going to adjust it for canning.
How does lagering then figure into this? How long do these, after that fermentation is complete, how long do they then condition after that?
Yeah, it depends, but I'm always trying to have a total of a 6 week production, which is pretty fast for a hardcore believer of lagering.
Sure.
But when the beer goes out from the FV, it's finished. So diacetyl is passed, and we have cropped the yeast, and gravity won't change that much. So we're gonna do a diacetyl test before going under 5 degrees, and whether we're in the unitank or in the bottling bottling tank. So after that, it's just a matter of clearing the beer. So we're not filtering any of our beers. So we want to give it time. But I don't see any change at 0 degrees for what happens into the beer, because the amount of yeast in suspension is so much a big flavor has so much a big flavor impact that like clearing the beer is the most important thing in the lagering for me.
And so you have some horizontal lager tanks here
Yeah.
in the brew house, but then you also mentioned conditioning in unit tanks. And so you do some mix of both of those things?
No, the beer will always stay at least 3 weeks in the unit tanks because
Okay.
we need that time to crop the yeast. So it won't settle before that, depending on which strain of yeast. But after that, we will use the horizontal tank to clear faster.
Okay.
Yeah, but to be frank, I don't see any difference with the horizontal tanks, and it certainly cleans faster. It clears faster
Sure,
because
sure.
It's just gravity.
Right, a shorter distance from the
Yeah,
top
but
to the bottom.
I couldn't convince people that it's better to do. It's just harder to clean and harder to manage.
Nothing wrong with that. Beyond Czech-style lager, what else really gets you excited brewing in this kind of European lager space?
Yeah, so we've been recognized for our lagers in the last year. So we like brewing lagers, so we're gonna continue in that way.
Yes, you have a jacket up here from the Poincaré lager competition.
Yeah.
The lager war they run, at the pub. We were there last night for some beer, and they run a continuing competition between breweries, voted on basically by sales from their customers. And you've won it a few times.
Yeah, I've won 2 times the final. So last year we presented an LS at that competition, and it was a new beer for us. So we brought a new yeast in the brewery, which is the Augustiner yeast, which is a little bit cleaner than the Czech yeast, but a little bit more sulfur. And then we're focusing on easy drinking lagers, a little bit less bitter and a little bit simpler.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the LS will get the small fake decoction that we
Sure.
because I think it's really nice to have a little bit more malty flavor in the LS, which we don't really need in the pills, which is a little bit hoppier.
Anything else to the way? What is your Helles bitterness?
It's 20 IBUs.
Okay.
Yeah. Pretty low for what we do here,
Sure.
but it's still balanced.
Yeah. And then in terms of malt, is there particular malt that you find gives you the character that you're looking for with that?
Also pretty simple. It's 100% Pilsner from Weirmann.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Easy.
Yeah. So,
and then you mentioned the Augustiner yeast, gave you some different kind of, challenges. How did you manage that fermentation versus your others?
yeah, but our process is pretty straightforward, but I like to use a lot of different yeast. So we have 4 or 5 different lager yeast that we use, and I think each of them, it's hard to describe, but they all have a different flavor profile. Even if we ferment them almost the same, we use for our Franconian lagers. We used the TUM 35, which was rediscovered a few years ago at the Technical University of Munich, which was I don't know if you know that story. They find it in their vault, and there was just a vial written 35, and it was like something that was used in the 1950 in Franconia, and they stopped using it because it wasn't clearing fast enough. So they preferred the 2470 that everybody uses now. But they revived it and made the test, and people were liking that one more in the blind test. So we imported a vial to the lab here, and we started to do our Franconian beers with it. Yeah.
Very cool. Franconian-style lager.
Yeah, I know that Schilling Brewing in Littleton, they use that yeast too for some beers.
Okay. Interesting. We'll have to explore that subject more. Obviously, love Franconian lagers, and the area around Bamberg is such a remarkable place, but also very different from those Munich-style lagers further south. Big and bold and characterful, and enjoyed tasting.
That's true. There's so many difference to explore in lagers. Yeah, we were doing a lot of Franconian style, and now we're focusing on new styles from Munich. So we've been brewing a Maibach that just came out a few weeks ago, and so there's always a new path to explore.
Sure. Well, as we finish up here, let's talk about the next few years for Silo. You started in the pandemic. You've now found beer drinkers who have caught up to your focus on lager, and now making lower ABV drinkable lagers is cool in the brewing world, where it might not have once been as cool when you started doing it. So what do the next few years look like for you? What do you hope to achieve over the next few years?
Yeah, well, we will still continue to brew, I hope, the same beers, and not too much new beers. I want to focus on what we have, and to stay close to what we like. Lagers being popular is not that much of a good thing, because now everybody's brewing lager, and you cannot tell who is passionate about it or not when you see the package on the shelves. So we have work to do to keep our place in the market. Yeah.
Well, a little bit of friendly competition is a good thing, and helps make everybody better, right? But it's great to see it, and it's great to see that these days up here in Montreal, there's quite a bit of breweries going deeper in that kind of lager space, and trying to focus on making these drinkable beers for people to enjoy. Obviously, there's a whole breadth of beers being made here in Quebec. Fantastic brewing world, and I'm glad that I get to enjoy and see it while I'm here. Jean-Phillippe, thank you for joining me on the podcast. G&D Chiller's engineering crew have been piping breweries, wineries, and distilleries for more than 30 years. Berkeley Yeast bioengineers ordinary strains to make them extraordinary. Hit the refresh button on your fruit flavors with Old Orchard's flavored craft juice concentrate blends. Indie Hops Lorien combines traditional elements of noble hops with an elegant twang of modernity. Discover how steel chill cups can put your brand on every pour at steelchillcups.com. Arrived as your one-stop brewery operating system, PackTech is trusted by craft brewers nationwide for their smarter, sustainable way to carry your beer, and the Brewery Workshop will help prepare you for the challenges of brewery operation. If you've enjoyed listening to this podcast, go to beerandbrewing.com, click on the subscribe button. We depend on your subscriptions to keep us going and help us bring you these great conversations, great stories, great recipes, great articles from fantastic brewers all over the world. If people want to learn more about Silo here in Montreal, is this the garment district, or it's an old manufacturing area?
Well, we're a little bit off-centered, but it's accessible by metro, and you can park. There's a lot of parking here. You can find us at Bière Silo on Facebook and Instagram. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for talking with me, Jean-Phillippe. It's been
Thank
a pleasure
to
me. Drink some beers and talk about how you brew them. Yeah, cheers.
Cheers.
This podcast has been brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine, for those who love to make and drink great beer. To learn more or to subscribe, visit beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew.